This man stole a loaf of bread and spent nearly 20 years in prison. You won't believe what he did when he was finally released. Hi there. Today we're going to explore the plot of the 2012 film Les Misérables. In 1815 in France, a police officer named Javert observes a group of prisoners struggling to move a large ship using heavy ropes. Once the task is completed, Javert orders one of the prisoners, Jean Valjean, to pick up a fallen flag. To everyone's surprise, Jean demonstrates incredible strength by lifting the heavy flag and throwing it at Javert's feet. Later it becomes known that Jean Valjean has received conditional release. He was sentenced for stealing bread for his sister's starving child. The original sentence was 5 years, but due to several escape attempts, it was extended to 19 years. Javert hands Jean a special document that he must carry with him at all times, otherwise he will be arrested again. Jean wanders the country trying to find work and shelter, but because of his criminal record, he is turned away everywhere. People consider him dangerous and won't even let him stay in a simple stable. Eventually, exhausted, he turns to the church. There, he is noticed by a bishop who, out of kindness, invites Jean to dinner and allows him to stay the night. Jean gratefully accepts the hospitality, enjoys the food and warmth, but during the night, he steals the bishop's silverware and runs away. In the morning, he is caught and brought back. To everyone's shock, the bishop says he gave the silver to Jean, and even adds 2 silver candlesticks. Then he asks Jean to use this gift to change his life. These words deeply affect Jean. He decides to start over with a clean slate. He tears up his parole papers and throws them from a cliff. 8 years pass. Jean is now the owner of a factory and the mayor of a town. One day, he notices a woman named Fantine among the workers. She is condemned because of her past. She has an illegitimate daughter, Cosette. People mock Fantine, accusing her of immoral behavior, even though she explains that the man she loved abandoned her. The workshop supervisor flirts with Fantine, but she rejects him. In retaliation, she is fired immediately. Fantine tries to ask Jean for help, but at that moment the police enter the factory. Javert is now the chief inspector in town. He does not recognize Jean, though his face seems familiar. Soon after, a worker is trapped under a cart. Jean saves him, again showing immense strength. Javert begins to suspect that Jean is the former prisoner he's been searching for over the past 8 years, but he doesn't have proof yet. Meanwhile, Fantine desperately tries to raise money to help her daughter. She first sells a pendant with Cosette's portrait, then her hair, and eventually even her teeth. But it's still not enough. She is forced to turn to the only option she has left. Life on the streets takes a toll on her health. One day, an aggressive customer causes a scene and the police are called. Javert tries to arrest Fantine, but Jean intervenes. He learns that she was once one of his employees and wants to help. Fantine blames Jean for not protecting her when she was fired. She tells him about her daughter, and Jean promises to save both her and Cosette. He carries Fantine to the hospital. Soon after, Javert receives a letter from Paris. A man resembling Jean Valjean has been arrested. He tells Jean about it. Jean becomes distraught. An innocent man may suffer because of him. He knows he can't allow this injustice to happen. At night, Jean goes to court and publicly confesses his true identity, but no one believes him. He asks them to summon Javert, and then he returns to the hospital to be with Fantine. The poor woman has a fever. She is delirious and calls out for her daughter. Jean comforts her and promises that he will find Cosette and that she will be happy. Hearing this, Fantine closes her eyes forever, peacefully, and with hope. At that moment, Javert arrives to arrest Jean. The hero understands that he cannot return to prison. He grabs a wooden stick to defend himself against Javert's sword, but the officer is much more experienced. He quickly disarms Jean. Jean is then forced to flee and jumps into a cold river to escape arrest. Meanwhile, we learn that little Cosette, Fantine's daughter, is living with the Thénardier foster family. They force her to work as a servant. The foster parents lied to Fantine, telling her that Cosette was ill and demanding money for her treatment, although the girl is actually completely healthy. The Thénardier's own daughter is dressed like a princess, while Cosette wears rags, lives in a stable, and performs hard labor. Jean finds the Thénardier's tavern, where he sees Cosette for the first time. He helps her carry a heavy bucket of water and tells her the tragic news of her mother's death. Jean wants to take the girl with him, but the Thénardiers do not want to let her go, as they benefit from her labor. They pretend to care for her and demand money for the medical expenses. Jean pays the imaginary debt of Fantine, even more than they asked. Only then do the couple allow him to take Cosette. Soon after, Javert arrives at the tavern, still searching for Jean, and the greedy Thénardiers regret not demanding even more money. Jean and Cosette escape in a carriage. However, at the city gates, the guards demand to see their documents. They are forced to flee, and Javert immediately begins his pursuit. Using a rope, Jean and Cosette climb a high wall and manage to disappear. The heroes hide in a church. There, they meet a man whom Jean once saved. He had pulled him out from under a heavy cart. As a sign of gratitude, the man agrees to help and hide Jean and Cosette from the police. 9 years pass. Poverty reigns in Paris, and the people are dissatisfied with the monarchy. Various political movements emerge in the country, including a youth group called the Friends of the ABC. They dream of a revolution to make life better. Among them is a young man named Marius. He comes from a wealthy family but has renounced his ties to his relatives and lives in poverty. His friend is Éponine, the daughter of the Thénardiers. She has loved Marius for a long time, but doesn't dare confess her feelings to him. One day, Marius sees Jean and the now-grown Cosette on the street. They are helping the poor, and the young man instantly falls in love with the girl. But the Thénardiers also recognize Jean, and hoping for profit, they begin planning another scheme. Javert and his assistants appear once again and disperse the crowd. Jean takes Cosette away, but on the way, their eyes meet with Marius's. The young man is captivated. Later, the Thénardiers inform the police that they have seen Jean Valjean. Javert once again sets out to find him. Meanwhile, Marius asks Éponine to find out where Cosette lives. That same night, the revolutionaries gather at a café. Marius cannot concentrate on the plans for the uprising because he keeps thinking about Cosette. His friends tease him, and the leader of the group, Enjolras, is displeased that Marius is distracted from their cause. Soon the people learn about the death of the only official who genuinely helped the poor. This becomes the spark for the revolution. While the rebels prepare for battle, Éponine brings Marius Cosette's address. The young man immediately sets out to meet the girl. It turns out Cosette has been thinking about him as well. She hasn't forgotten that look. Since Jean and Cosette are forced to stay in hiding, their life is full of restrictions. But that night, the girl goes out into the garden and meets Marius. They fall in love with each other instantly. Éponine, who had been watching them from afar, feels a deep surge of jealousy. Soon Jean appears in the garden and orders Cosette to return to the house. Marius hides and only manages to pick up a handkerchief the girl accidentally dropped. At that moment, Thénardier and his gang are planning to rob Jean's house, but Éponine loudly warns Cosette and Jean about the danger. Because of the commotion, the police arrive, and the criminals are forced to flee. Jean realizes that Javert will soon find him, so he tells Cosette that they must leave for England immediately. The girl begs to stay, but Jean does not change his decision. Cosette leaves a note for Marius by the gate and departs. Éponine finds it. She hides it from Marius and tells him that Cosette has disappeared. Marius runs to his beloved's home but finds no one there. After that, he returns to his revolutionary friends. Éponine dresses as a boy and joins the rebels. The youth gather at the barricades and prepare to resist. The next day, they stop a funeral procession, raise flags, and sing songs about freedom and justice. More and more people join them. Among the crowd is Javert, who is pretending to be one of the revolutionaries in order to spy. Soon, gunfire begins. The army attacks. The rebels build barricades from furniture and other items thrown to them by the townspeople from windows. Enjolras realizes that a scout is needed. Javert volunteers, continuing to pretend to be an ally, and gives the rebels false information. One of the boys exposes him. Javert is captured. Another fierce clash begins. The city streets turn into a battlefield. Marius rushes with a barrel of gunpowder to the barricade to hold off the soldiers. One of the attackers aims at him, and Éponine throws herself in the way to protect the one she loves. She is wounded. In the last moments of her life, the girl gives Marius Cosette's letter and confesses her feelings. Marius writes a reply and asks one of the young revolutionaries to deliver it to Cosette, but Jean intercepts it. After reading the letter, he decides to go to the barricades to save Marius. Disguised in a soldier's uniform, Jean joins the rebels. At first they think he is a spy and tie him up next to Javert, but Jean saves his comrades by spotting snipers on a rooftop. They begin to trust him. Jean asks for permission to punish Javert personally. Left alone, he unties his former enemy and lets him go. With this act, Jean wants to prove that he is a good man. Javert leaves, and Jean fires his gun into the air to create the impression of an execution. The next morning, Marius notices that because of the rain, all the explosives have become unusable. Ammunition is nearly gone, and many people have returned home. Only young fighters remain at the barricades. They decide to fight to the end. One of the youngest revolutionaries crawls out of cover to collect bullets. This only strengthens the rebels' determination. The battle continues. The army uses cannons, and the barricade collapses. Fewer and fewer revolutionaries remain. They try to hide in houses, but the townspeople are afraid to open their doors. Marius is wounded and loses consciousness. Jean, risking his life, lifts the young man onto his shoulders and escapes with him through the sewers. Meanwhile, Enjolras and his remaining comrades barricade themselves in an abandoned building. They are eventually found, but even in the face of death, Enjolras does not let go of the flag. Jean walks through the dark and flooded tunnels carrying Marius. In a passage, he encounters Thénardier. The man steals a valuable ring from Marius's hand. Exhausted, Jean finally finds an exit, but Javert is waiting for him. Jean begs to be allowed to take Marius to the hospital and promises to surrender afterward. Javert agrees, and then jumps into the river himself. Marius regains consciousness and learns what happened. He wants to find his rescuer, but first meets with Cosette. Jean sees that his adopted daughter is happy and decides to leave. He tells Marius the truth about himself and gives them his blessing to marry. Marius promises to keep the secret. The young couple gets married, but Cosette notices Jean's absence and begins to worry. At the wedding, the Thénardiers arrive, pretending to be guests in order to steal something. Marius recognizes them and tries to drive them away. Thénardier admits that he saw Jean save the young man and shows the stolen ring. Marius finally realizes who saved him. Together with Cosette, they find Jean and thank him for his kindness. The hero is happy to see his daughter once again. She is happy, and now he can leave this world in peace. The spirit of Jean Valjean joins those who gave their lives for dreams and freedom. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, give it a like, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.